what I'm going to talk about today is sustainability in, I think, a broader sense. We tend to think of it as environmental, but I think we also have to think of cultural sustainability, and I don't think that the two are actually disconnected. So that's basically the broad outline of what I want to talk about today. And I'll be talking about the work that we've been doing in education for artisans. Okay. So I think the first question is, who are artisans? Because today in India, I think mostly artisans are considered as skilled technicians who can realize the concepts of designers, and you're all studying to be designers, so this, I hope, will speak to you. So the question is, are artisans workers? When I was on the train to Bagalkot, we have an outreach project in Bagalkot that I'll talk about later. The first time when I was on the train to Bagalkot, I happened to notice that in the second AC car of the train, the white cotton polyester bed sheets had this tag, hand loom, and I thought, what's wrong with this picture? So when I got to Bagalkot, the picture started to come clearer to me. Unlike in Kutch, which we'll get to later, in Bagalkot, I think you see more the situation that you find in the majority of weavers in India. Most of the weavers are working for quote unquote master weavers. Master weaver is not a weaver at all. Master weaver is a, what shall we say, a malik, okay? And they work for minimal wages, and they all have borrowed lots of money from the master weavers so that at the wages that they earn, they'll never be able to pay it back. So the master weaver has a nice, neat situation. And I have to say, honestly, that the weavers don't mind it either, because they find it a certain sense of security. So it's kind of a mutually agreed upon situation, but in my view, not the best. Many of them had power looms back to back with their hand looms, and these were weavers of ilkol saris. I'm wearing one right now from from our project, and these weavers were being pressured by the government to give up their traditional hand looms and take up jacquard looms to make copies of what was woven in Varanasi. And as everyone I think knows, the weavers in Varanasi are in difficult times also. In some villages, when I was searching for handloom weavers, I could only find one. This fellow, the last handloom weaver in his village, was weaving what? Plain yardage for school uniforms. Okay, so I'm thinking, here is a human being with creative capacity. Why in the world is he doing what a machine ought to be doing? I'm giving you a hint, okay? We have in the Indian government, we have a lot of attention to craft. We have a Ministry of Textiles, we have many schemes for uplifting artisans, and most of these they're all well funded. Most of them are aimed at skill upgradation, okay? And this fits in with the whole idea of Make in India, which, as we know, was launched in 2014. And I started to think about it, okay? India is very firmly entrenched in the industrial age, and it's focused on manufacturing, right? Meanwhile, many NGOs who work with craft are concerned that artisans are leaving craft as a livelihood. Laila Tayebji estimates 15 to 20% of artisans leave their craft every year. In India, craft was never done on large-scale factories, production lines. Traditionally, individuals or families thought of what they would make, produced it, and even marketed it. So it was a holistic creation. In the 1950s, as India began nation building, it focused on industrialization as a means to becoming a self-sufficient nation. And along with that, we had inflation, an influx of cheaper industrial produced products. And so traditional clients, those traditionally linked communities, started to prefer synthetics, plastics, and mill-made fabrics to handcraft. So artisans, in order to survive, had to look farther away for markets that they didn't know. previously they knew the markets very well. They adjusted to them because they were so intimately known. Okay, at the same time, the concept of design as an entity was introduced in India. And we have to realize that design as an entity is really an industrial concept. And so we find artisans are perceived as skilled laborers. And that's why simply artisans leave craft, because from their perspective, it doesn't generate enough income or recognition and respect. And that's important too, right? It's not only about money. I had been studying craft as an anthropologist for a long time, craft and touch, and then working with hand embroidery artisans. And that's when, after thinking about all this, I decided to start a program of design education for artisans, because I felt a new direction was needed. We had to reboot, think in a completely new way. The idea that I had in starting a design education program for artisans was to, first of all, value traditional craft as culture.